Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of DGS2 Case 1. So we just heard Mr. Momi's testimony and now we're gonna go through it and, well, I'll press whatever I've been given to press. So you saw Hari-sama enter the shack?
Yes. She was blazing with anger so intense that it was almost enough to dry out my eyes as I appeared in.
So, when you say they argued, what exactly were they talking about?
Stole and didn't steal. Something of that nature.
They must have been talking about the poison, I guess.
The schoolgirl suddenly closed in on the Englishwoman, her black hair standing on end. Rage-swept hair reaches the heavens. The schoolgirl's long hair pierced the heights of heaven.
He might be more suited for novel writing than journalism.
However, the Englishwoman was completely unperturbed, just like a Japanese person hearing English for the first time.
He might be too terrible at similes to make it as a novelist.
In any case, the schoolgirl defendant seemed incredibly irate.
I'm sure all the blood rushed to her head and she had committed her crime before she knew it.
And that's how I came to encounter the fateful moment.
I was gonna say, like, that simile was pretty bad. Did you really see the exact moment?
Ha! Not just the exact moment. I, Momi, saw the entire hellish scene clearly, from start to finish.
Here's an overhead diagram of the shack where the murder occurred. Witness, kindly describe the sequence of events as you witnessed them.
Very well. It's all part of my Momi philosophy. When I, the observer, peeked into the shack, the Englishwoman, as I recall, was at the back of the shack, seated on a chair.
Yes, the defendant herself testified the same thing.
She sat at the back of the room, smiling unconcernedly at me. Those were her words.
I'm in the middle of my testimony. Don't interrupt me.
Wow.
Anyway, I was peeking in, and the next thing I knew, that sinister schoolgirl entered the shack. They began to argue furiously in the middle of the shack. The violent schoolgirl lunged at her, but the Englishwoman skillfully dodged her. The blade sliced through the air and landed with a flash in the victim's back.
Well, that seems gruesome. It sounds like a terrifying crime to witness.
To give a crystal clear testimony, here's part of my Momi philosophy.
Overhead diagram of crime scene. An overhead diagram of the shack where the murder occurred. Shows the layout of the time at the time of the crime. By the way, Momi-sama, if you were viewing this terrifying turn of events from the gaps in the read screen, why did you make no attempt to enter and stop the crime instead of taking a photo? Oh, that's a good question.
We newspaper reporters are destined to go through life as mere observers.
Okay, I'm sorry, but that's BS. So you never said a word to Giselle Brett?
Naturally. Observers can only sit on the outside and look in on events as they occur, you see.
Is that really something to brag about? Your Honor, if I may. Yes? It seems that we'd best we be best served by having those outstanding words added to the witness's testimony.
Father?
The court accepts the defense's request. Reporter, please add your last statement to your testimony.
Nihilism is a basic principle of my modern philosophy. Leaving my mark on the record is but a brief amusement to me.
Yeah, okay, sure, whatever. Jesus.
I neither entered the shack nor met the Englishwoman. I was merely an observer.
Are you sure about that? So, his name is Mame Momeheta, right? Where else have we seen that particular set of, first letter name? The first letters of his first and last name. Mame-sama, I have always believed that newspapers reported the truth without any falsehoods.
Precisely. The newspaper doesn't lie. I swore it on the Daily Daikoku's shining insignia. That, in a sense, is also part of my modern philosophy.
However, unfortunately, it seems that the person who writes those articles does lie.
What exactly are you implying?
Does this fountain pen look familiar to you?
There!
This was discovered at the scene of the crime. Apparently the victim was holding it in her hand.
What?
The initials of the owner is engraved on the grip. HM, it says.
Indeed! Naturally, those are the initials of the defendant, Murasame Haori.
Is it a coincidence, Mame Momi-sama? Your initials are also HM, correct?
Ah!
Yeah! Hita Mami Momi. HM.
Ridiculous. Look, you can clearly see. I'm a pencil user, born and bred.
However, it appears that your right hand has a stain on it which appears to have been made by blue ink. You must have recently lost it somewhere. Your beloved fountain pen, I mean.
Ridiculous.
Mame Momi-sama, at the time of the murder, you met Giselle Brett-sama, didn't you? Oh yeah! I'll never get tired of this objection.
We don't need to listen to this nonsense! It's nothing but conjecture!
Exactly. The Daily Daikoku is determined to fight you on this to the bitter end. There are as many people with the initials HM as there are stars in the sky.
The defense doesn't have time to go around counting stars.
Eh?
This fountain pen is hiding one more clue. A piece of immovable evidence that indicates its owner. Very well. The court requests that the defense present this evidence. Yes, Your Honor. The clue hidden on the pen that indicates who the owner is. Now remember we saw a weird symbol on top of this pen? It's the same symbol that we see on his armband. This fountain pen has an insignia engraved on it. You recognize this, don't you, Mame Momi-sama?
Ah!
That's the Daily Daikoku's insignia. In other words, the owner of this fountain pen is a reporter for the Daily Daikoku with the initials HM. It seems that the number of stars in the skies has just been narrowed down significantly. Well, what do you have to say for yourself, Mame Momi-sama?
Damn it!
We got you now. What you gonna do? Order, order! What's the meaning of this? Witness?
Ha ha ha.
Why is he laughing?
I see. So this is how the Supreme Court operates. Viciously exposing the harmless secrets of respectable citizens, claiming its evidence.
I think it's a perfectly respectable way to operate.
Fine then. I won't try to run or hide. Just before that fearsome event that day, I had an interview with the Englishwoman as a representative of the public.
An interview?
I didn't hear anything about this, you dirty reporter!
So when on earth was this?
Before that schoolgirl entered the shack to commit her brutal crime. A mere 2 to 3 minute exchange. No more than that. Boring content gets thrown out. That's another part of my Mamamumi philosophy.
The court cannot overlook the existence of this interview. You will testify about when you met the victim.
Fine with me. However, I have one condition.
A condition?
I can't tell this story on my own. Let us call the previous witness, Mr. Natsume Souseki, back to the stand!
Souseki-sama?
According to my Mamamui philosophy, that literary master is hiding something that can't be considered a trifle. In fact, it's huge!
What?
What the heck does Souseki know?
Don't let other secrets remain hidden! That's also part of my Mamamui philosophy.
Very well. The court will grant the witness's request. Bailiff, escort the previous witness to the stand. Souseki-sama? Hiding something? Poor Souseki. He's like, I did nothing wrong, man. Why am I back here? Why am I back here with this reporter? He's just... What the witnesses are hiding, Witnesses are hiding.
The Englishwoman refused to let me do an article on her, so I quietly left the shack. After that, I saw the witnesses rush onto the scene after the murder occurred. The detective found that she still had a pulse and ran off to get help. That's when this literary master asked the collapsed victim an important question. He still hasn't testified about that. I'd like to have him held expressly accountable for it.
Souseki! What? The victim?
She regained consciousness?
Yes, well...
And not only that, but you asked her a question?
Well, I suppose...
Yes. And the victim gave his question a clear answer. One that indicts the defendant.
This is the first I've heard of this. The prosecution was not informed. Hey, you, hick author. Why didn't you ever mention any of this?
Oh, it was by no means a conversation. It's true that I asked the English lady something, but she had already lost her ability to speak, and she wasn't fully conscious.
The defense will conduct its cross-examination without holding back, so that we may know the truth. Yes, Your Honor. Said it would indict Haori-sama. What on earth happened in that shack? I like how we brought Souseki up, but Souseki didn't even actually say anything during this thing, so that's funny. Which one are we pressing on here? Looks like the fourth statement. Right, on to that. What was the question?
That's something better asked the man himself. Wouldn't you say, Arthur?
Yes, sir!
Damn you, you hick author! What the hell did you speak to the dying English woman about?
At the time, I had been playing with a crab along the shore and had built a sand hill on the beach.
Oh, Souseki! The mental image of a full-grown adult doing those activities is quite a peaceful one.
That's when I heard the schoolgirl screaming for help from within the shack.
Haori-sama did.
I came running, and the defendant was standing across from the victim, who was lying on the ground. Upon seeing that, Detective Hosonaga left the shack at once to call for help. The next thing I knew, the English lady who was on the ground groaned. I was so shocked that I feared I'd be departing from this world even before she did.
So, and what did you ask her, Souseki-sama?
Who did this to you?
And what did the victim reply?
Well, as I mentioned before, she didn't reply. But
You will add this to your testimony to ensure that everything that occurred at the crime scene is made clear.
yes, sir.
Poor Souseki, just caught in the worst placed situation all the time.
I asked her, who did this to you? But she didn't answer.
And you were referring to the killer at the time, right?
As the old saying goes, to ask is to bear brief shame, to not ask is to bear eternal shame. After having been accused of crimes myself twice in the Great British Empire, I made up my mind. Next time I'll ask whatever occurs to me without shame.
But you did end up getting an answer from the victim, correct?
I'll bet that rotten English lady had decided to ignore me just because I'm a hunched-over, mustachioed Japanese man.
Souseki-sama, it looks like he's become quite bitter towards England. I read her international study report, and I can't deny the possibility.
But I'm sure the Englishwoman wasn't just ignoring him. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Arthur?
Well, I suppose she actually did reply.
Did she or did she not reply, Souseki? Please!
All she did was lift a trembling finger, and it looked like she was pointing it at the defendant.
Oh, that's not good. Never mind. Maybe you didn't need to do that. You didn't need to give that answer. Giselle Brett pointed at Haori-sama? Souseki-sama, is that true?
This is incredibly difficult for me to say, but when we stepped into the shack, the English lady was on the ground before us, and the schoolgirl was standing across from her. When I asked her who stabbed her, the lady gathered the last of her strength and pointed a trembling finger towards the back of the shack.
The back of the shack. Where was Momei actually looking in to observe the incident?
And at the time, the only person at the other end of that finger was that schoolgirl.
But... Witness, why did you not testify about this earlier?
You got it all wrong! No!
Please give your testimony in plain English. Plain Japanese!
I admit that the English lady pointed to the back of the shack. However, not only was her finger trembling, but I was trembling as well. Now that I think back on it, her finger didn't seem to be aimed right at the schoolgirl. No, actually, I think it might have been quite a bit off. It was more like she was pointing at the back wall of the shack where no one was.
So you mean that both your memory and the direction her finger was aimed in was unclear, correct?
Yes, that! Unclear! I was unclear about it.
Everything has become clear at last, Your Honor. Her consciousness may have been fading and the aim of her finger may have been off. But there can be no mistake that the lady was indicating the schoolgirl because... As you can see, there was no one but the defendant in the direction that the victim was pointing. It's clear that no one but the schoolgirl could have murdered the victim.
Indeed, you're right. So long as there are no other possibilities, I must assume that it's time for me to hand down my verdict. No!
I can see tomorrow's headline now. Pretty Boy Defense Attorney, elegantly defeated in the 92-point continuous special edition!
This isn't good, Susato. Unless we can indicate the name of the real killer right now, this trial will be completely finished.
That's impossible. I mean, we still don't even know how the crime was committed.
We have no choice but to do the impossible. Think back to all the information we've heard so far. There must be a clue in there somewhere.
Haori-sama told me in the lobby earlier about when the murder happened. She said,
The Englishwoman was sitting at the back of the shack, listening as I confronted her. And then the next thing I knew, that woman got unsteadily to her feet. She collapsed before my very eyes. That knife was sticking out of her back.
how could the victim have been stabbed inside that closed-off shack?
Through the reeds!
The answer lies somewhere in the information we've heard so far.
It would appear the defense has no rebuttal.
You did surprisingly well for a Pretty Boy Hicks student.
Now then, I shall hand down my definitive verdict.
This moment is the junction that will decide our fate. Without proof, it's all over. Where was the true killer? And how was the victim stabbed?
I have proof. I don't have proof. I have proof.
Please, just one moment, Your Honor.
What is it, defense?
The defense is prepared to prove the other possibility as to what the victim used the last of their strength trying to point out. The other possibility? There is none. There was just one other person who could possibly have committed the crime. What? And the victim tried to accuse that person with the last of her strength and her shaking finger. Ridiculous! What other nonsense!
Very well. If the defense is so sure, then state your claim for the court. Attorney, Naruhodō Ryūnosuke. Yes, Your Honor. The court requested you identify this person. Where was that person hiding themselves at the moment when the victim was stabbed? In the back! On the other side of this wall! I can't retreat now, especially after claiming to be a Naruhodō. The murderer who stabbed the victim was here, of course. That's outside the crime scene. What? You better be sweating. Order, order, order!
But Mr. Attorney, that doesn't add up!
That's where I was hidden, for starters.
Uh-huh.
I didn't see anyone who looked like a murderer there. I can promise you that.
I wonder why you didn't see anyone.
That's right. For one thing, if the killer had been outside the shack, then there's no way they could have stabbed the victim.
If I may, there was just one way.
Eh?
And, more importantly, there is proof that that method was actually used.
No way! You half-baked hick of a...
It sounds like the defense's accusation is going to be even bigger than we imagined. Well then, go ahead and show the court your proof. The evidence showing how could someone outside the shack have stabbed the victim is... Could have stabbed the victim is... the crime scene photo.
Could I?
This is the photo of the crime scene. This photo clearly shows traces of the crime having been committed from outside the shack.
Ridiculous! I see nothing of the sort!
Are you certain of that? It seems that at least one person realizes what I'm talking about. In that case, the court requests the defense pointed out. The traces left behind after the crime shown in this picture are... There's a gap here, if you noticed, where she was sitting.
Could I?
Please direct your attention here. There are traces that suggest that a knife was forced through the reeds.
I don't see any... I see no such thing!
It's true that the crime scene was surrounded by 4 walls. However, the weave of the reeds was loose, so it would have been possible to shove a small knife in through them. It can't be. Yes. The murderer stabbed the victim from outside the crime scene. And there is only one person who could have done so. That's the person who was outside the shack when the crime occurred. Mami Hita-sama, it could have only been you.
I'm speechless! Look at this photo closely! The very middle of the shack is where the victim collapsed, see? Are you trying to tell us that the knife was thrown through the gap between the reeds and stabbed her in the back?
No. Where was she sitting before that? There was no need for that.
What do you mean?
The defendant testified that the following occurred right before the murder.
I confronted the Englishwoman in that small shack. She just sat at the back of the room, smiling unconcernedly at me.
Sitting!
Now let's look at this photo again. The placement of the hole in the reeds is exactly where the back of someone would be if they'd been seated. So then, the victim was stabbed through the reeds while she was sitting.
Ah!
After being stabbed, Giselle Brett reflexively stood up. But she collapsed right there without uttering a word. Right in front of Haori-sama. That's what happened in the shack that day. Take that. May I interpret your silence as an admission of guilt? Oh, he's not gonna stop without a fight because this is Ace Attorney.
Ridiculous!
That's enough! It would seem that the witness has just admitted to his crime. I believe the court has finally arrived at the truth. Namely, that the defendant, Murasame Haori, is innocent. Finally! He had finally admitted to his crime. I've never felt as proud of you as I do now.
Inconceivable! Aochi Takasuchi! Upon whose barren plain of shorn head, hope sprouted anew. Found it to be nothing but an illusion. I have no choice but to admit.
The court sees no reason for this trial to continue any longer. I shall now hand down my verdict.
Hold it! Oh my, isn't this amusing?
Like I said, he wasn't gonna go down without a fight!
So, this is the height of our country's legal system. A Supreme Court ruling? Suppressing the speech of respectable citizens and recklessly setting them up as criminals?
But her being stabbed from outside the shack through a gap in the reeds is the truth. And the only one there who could have done so was you. It seems like awfully reasonable proof to me.
You want to talk about where that Englishwoman was stabbed from? What does that matter this late in the game?
This late in the game?
Where and how that lady was stabbed? No. The fact that she was stabbed at all doesn't matter anymore. After all, this trial has already changed the situation in a huge way!
What? And just what is that supposed to mean?
The situation has done an about-face. That's what I mean, Mr. Student. And by none other than your own hands.
Huh? Witness, explain yourself. We will have to do that in the next video because we are now out of time. So, I'll see you guys then.